What's up, everybody? We're here with a special guest, Benjamin Weingart, who is, if I'm correct, based out of Boston. You're a producer and photographer for Tin Man Elite. You've done work with Tracksmith, Reebok, and other companies. Let's just get started. Would you like to tell us about who you are, like your background in running and media?
Of course, sure. So my name is Ben. I started shooting when I was probably 16, maybe a little bit younger, a little bit older. I picked up my dad's camera and just like had a passion for it. Like I watched a lot of Casey Neistat videos and was really inspired by that like DIY mentality. Like I'd never met an artist that like was kind of rough around the edges or like made work that was like not perfect. So as a young kid, I never really found I was afraid of the creativity stuff because I thought like being an artist or being a creative was like drawing a beautiful painting in art class or whatever, but that just like wasn't my style. That's not who I am. So I ended up running in college, trying to run in college. I walked on to Miami of Ohio, and I ended up getting cut from the team because I wasn't quite good enough. I was a decent runner in high school. It was the only sport that I had ever really seen any success in. I'm not particularly coordinated, so running was a nice adjustment. And the first time I was ever really part of a team and part of like a community. And that was my high school experience. So stepped up to college. It was really important to me to run D1. I took a swing at running D1 and I totally blew it. I just like wasn't quite ready for the workload that it required. And anyway, yeah, so I ended up coming back to Boston and took a semester off and was working at the local running store, Heartbreak, which I'm sure you've seen on social. So I was there way back in the day. It's probably like 2015, 2016. And I picked up my dad's camera and started shooting around, doing the long runs and like taking pictures of the guy in the gorilla suit because I didn't have to be in the gorilla suit if I was the photographer for that day. So that was like the beginning. And I realized the more I got involved and the photography was a means to like stay connected to the sport. Like I was super passionate about running, but I wasn't on the team, right? Like most people have this kind of like come to grips moment after they graduate where they're like, oh, I'm done. I don't have to do this anymore. But I realized that I needed to be connected to running in some capacity. And I realized my legs were never going to bring me to an Olympics, but my camera might if I played the game right and I got better and I practiced. So that was kind of the crux for me that really inspired me to get into it. And then I transferred into Northeastern University, which is in Boston, right in downtown, and studying communications. Eventually walked onto the team at the very end, but I had 2.5 years in there where I was just kind of training on my own with a post-collegiate group in the city and using that flexibility to shoot. So doing freelance event photography for Tracksmith, got to do a couple of cool internships. Like I was at ASICS doing social media management, doing photography stuff on the side, mostly just like shooting my friends. You know, Boston was a bit of a running hub. The BU meets, everybody comes to town. So it was a really cool opportunity to just like, you don't need a press credential to get on the infield. You just kind of walk down there and pretend like you know what you're doing. So that's kind of where I cut my teeth. And then out of pure serendipity, I connected with Sam Parsons of the Tin Man Elite. At the time was like tiny. They had like an Instagram account with like a couple of followers. I think they had the logo. And I was like, hey, like, I think you guys are doing something really cool. Would love to be able to like, you know, help out in any way, shape or form. And I think he was a little bit taken aback by, yeah, he was taken aback. He was just like, sure, man, like whatever, like if you want to do that, that sounds great. So I ended up like paying my way out, booked flights, and without realizing it became the original Tin Turn. And that's how you know you're a real Tin Man fan. If you're an OG, you like know who I am because I keep a pretty low profile on social these days. So yeah, that was the kind of my big break, I guess you can call it, but it just kind of was a beautiful happenstance moment. My first opportunity to shoot some big meets. I got to shoot the pre-classic that year in 2018, USA's, and travel around with the guys and got pretty close with them. And then through college, as I finished up my degree and finished up my eligibility, whenever I had free second, so summers and sometimes winters, I would spend a week or two or a couple months with the Tin Man guys, helping work on creative stuff with them. And then I graduated, freelance for a bit, did it for about a year. I graduated into COVID, which was a bit of a bummer and a hard time to start a freelance career. But learned a lot through that process, did a couple of cool projects, and then ended up getting a full-time role working on social media strategy at Puma, and that's where I'm at now. So right now my creative process in the running media is just honestly all passion project. Like I work in the running business unit with the people that like produce and market running shoes, because it's what I care and I'm super passionate about. But all the creative work that you see on my Instagram is usually like, I mean, sometimes I take on paid commissions, but to be honest, it's usually just, me trying to express myself as a creative, as an artist, trying to make work that I think is interesting and different. I coined at a relatively young age, this has been kind of been my tagline, at the intersection of art and athletics is kind of the space in which I operate, where there's always going to be somebody at the finish line with the like bazooka long lens getting the beautiful shot that'll go on the New York Times or go on Sidious or whatever. And that's not me. Like, it's just never been me. I'm usually facing the other direction, looking at how the sun is reflecting off, some old guy's sunglasses. Like, that's the stuff, the light, the color, the form, the shape is all the stuff that I've been really interested in, because I do think like running itself and movement is like so beautiful. And I'm just so passionate about capturing that beauty and that feeling that you get from going on a run or finishing a race, or what it feels like to kind of hold all of those micro emotions up on a pedestal and say like, look how amazing our sport is, and trying to celebrate the little bits and pieces, the little victories, the things that some folks you may not even be able to comprehend when you're shooting a big meet like that. So that's kind of my origin story, current story, wrapped into a quick-ish little elevator pitch. TED Talk. But yeah, that's
Awesome.
me.
Yeah. So you mentioned how you picked up your dad's camera. So I'm assuming it wasn't, professional, crazy expensive. What, any tips you would give high schoolers who want to do the same? Just their lens might not have the most.
Yeah, totally. Great question. I think so. Let's be honest. Like, right, like, having a professional gear is super helpful, right? Like that, it makes it easier to get the pictures you can see in your mind. But when you're starting, you probably don't have access. And if you did have access, you wouldn't be able to properly get everything that you need out of your equipment, because you're still learning the ropes. You're learning out how to make the things, right? So I think there are two bits I want to instill. The first one is like, it truly doesn't matter. Like my daily driver, I have this small, it's a Fuji. I'm not a huge gear fan, but it's called a Fuji X100F. And I will say, like, it was $800, which is expensive, but they make cameras that are like within the $300 to $400 range that match it. It's literally a point and shoot. Like, I look through the viewfinder, I snap the photo. And the reason that camera is my daily driver is because it's small. I can put it in my pocket, I can put it in my backpack, I can wear it around my neck and not have the rug burn from my camera strap. And like being able to have it on me at all times makes the best pictures in the game. And it's not as intimidating. Like, I really prefer doing my portrait work with that camera, because when you look down the barrel of like a really huge behemoth camera lens, it's like intimidating to be yourself. And the work that I make, I really try to have it be personal or impersonal for that matter. So like if I'm shooting a stranger, I don't necessarily want them to know that I'm going to take a photo of them. So having this small little gear is great. And then on top of that, I think being able to use the light rather than the gear. So for example, if you're not stoked with the way your pictures have been coming out and you go through your archive or whatever, you're thinking about shooting practice, and it's like practice is at noon. Well, of course the light's not going to be the best. It's going to be really blown out. You have to, like, when you're a photographer and you're growing, you need to figure out how to use the light and read it almost like a book. So I know that if I go out in the middle of the day, my images probably aren't going to have that same like glowy, dewy, beautiful golden tint that I would like. Or like I really like blue hour. So after golden hour, like the images that have like are moodier and a little bit quieter and bluer and like more dark, that stuff I'm not going to get at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. Like I need to wait until the sun is going down or waiting to go down. So oftentimes if you're, shooting with your buddies, shooting with your friends, like being like, okay, how can we make this work within like how are we going to work with the light that exists? Because once you figure out how light works, it makes it way easier. Like the gear isn't going to hold you back there. The only thing that'll hold you back is like, the experience of like going through it a couple of times. So My biggest advice would be have some, whatever, even if it's, honestly, man, even if it's your iPhone or your mom's old point and shoot from 2004, like have it something on you at all times, and then use what you've got. So if you look at your situations and you know your community or where you take photos and make pictures and make video, whatever, like use that to your advantage because you know it inside and out. And you can check the weather app and see when the sun is going to set, and be able to channel yourself and set yourself up to make some really great images.
Yeah. So another thing you mentioned about how you worked for some brands and also freelance. What would you say are the pros and cons of, working for a brand or like you just doing freelance stuff for, your college buddies or
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a really good question. I think the freelance pros are the flexibility. Like you can work on any project you want for the most part. Like you can pitch yourself left and right. You can pitch yourself up and down. You can work in different industries. You can get a little bit of a snippet of everything. It's not easy to guarantee that you're going to get paid for doing all that work. Like you do a lot of pitching, you do a lot of prep work. You put, as the better and better you get, the bigger and bigger the like briefs, the like document you send to a client or a company, basically like saying, pick me, I'm the guy, I'm the gal for the job. Those get more complicated, but a lot of prep work goes into that. It's not just like showing up and shooting every day and being like, photo shoot God. Like that's not usually how that works. I mean, maybe for people that are more successful than me, who knows, but how do you yeah. Well, anyway, so when I was freelancing and trying to negotiate some of that stuff, it's probably like 60 or 70% like admin stuff, like sending emails, reaching out to people, making connections, and then probably even like, I don't know, I said 30% taking and making pictures and editing, probably 10% actually doing the pictures, and then another 20% editing and working on that. So that it's not like an easy, here you go, here's a bag of money, go make pictures. It's kind of what I thought it was going to be like when I started. And to be honest, I'm not quite as good of a hustler. Like I base a lot of my like creative work on my relationships with people. And it was hard for me to like constantly be like, hey, but like, you have any work for me? You have any work for me? That's just not like who I am as a person. So that said, the flexibility is amazing. Being able to work on amazing projects is amazing. Being able to like have an understanding of what goes on across the industry and working with incredible people, like the models, the producers, everybody that you spend time with when you're making work is that's like, kind of why we do it. Right.
mm-hmm.
But I will say the perks of the stability, it's like, honestly, it's just getting paid every day on time. Like it's nice. It's nice having that financial flexibility allows me personally to make creative work that I'm really proud of. So when I was freelancing, a lot of the commercial work I was making and make whenever I take on some freelance gigs is not the best work I've ever made. It's not. It just isn't. It's a brief with a picture from, Courtney White or Joe Hale, and they say, hey, can you like make something like that? And like, that's a it's flattering when a company is like, we think you're great and we want to help to like have you be a person who makes work for us. But to be honest, like a lot of the process is based on cutting and copying, because a lot of the work that we make as a collective is nobody is inventing the wheel. Like people have been making pictures for decades, for like hundreds of years. So like it's not nobody's reinventing the wheel. So being able to like now do my work, sometimes it's awesome, sometimes it's a little bit annoying, but then take a step back, and when I want to pick up my camera and go do something cool or like work on a passion project, I can, and I don't have to worry about, I don't know if I can afford to produce this scene, because of course I can. I make money now. I'm an adult for the most part, which is weird to say out loud, but at the end of the day, like I feel really free right now to work on stuff that I'm excited about. Do I wish it was every day? Yes, absolutely. But I also recognize the fact that even if I was freelancing, it may not be every day, because there's plenty of admin tasks and stuff that involve being it's a job, just like any other job. It's a job, and it has good parts and it's bad parts. But yeah, trying to right now in my regular job absorb as much info as I can. So if I ever decide to go back to freelance, I work with a lot of freelancers. So when I go back to do it, I like have a full understanding and a lot of connections that will help make making the transition to full-time freelance easier if that's ever a path that I decide to travel again.
Yeah. So what is your job right now? And how did you find projects, especially when you were just starting up? How did you find places to go, people to shoot, and
yeah. Great question. So right now I am a social media manager for Puma. I work on the Puma running social accounts, doing both content creation and strategy. And I got the job because it's actually kind of crazy. Like I got the job because of a friend of mine that I met when I was working retail at Heartbreak Hill Running Company. She was a member of the Heartbreakers, which is the club, and I had some friends that worked for Puma in the past, but she was the hiring manager, or one of the hiring managers for a job. She told me about this one. I applied for one, didn't get it, and then she told me about this next one, and it just kind of happened to be perfect. She's like, "Well, you have this creative background. You've done work with Tin Man, like blah blah blah. You've done work for Tracksmith. You've done work for all these brands. Like, I think you'd be and you're a photographer. I think you'd be a good role for like somebody on our social team." So that's how I found myself in the job, and a lot of the reason I'm here is because of those connections I made when I was, in high school. Like I was 16, 15. When I was a senior in high school, I was the assistant. I got an internship under the head of the store, Dan. And I basically followed him around and brought him coffee and stuff. And I learned how to sell shoes, and that was cool. But I would say my advice to anybody is go to your local running store and be like, "Hey, can I help?" Because that's kind of what I did. And you will meet the running world is really small. So the tech rep that you meet on the third day that might give you a pair of socks from Belega may one day be the head, a product manager at a different company. So it's everybody's moving around. Everybody gets their start. A lot of people get their start and run specialty. And it's a really great place to learn how the industry works. And if I didn't have that background, I wouldn't understand product as well as I do, which helps me as a creative and a photographer, because I know how to manicure a shoe if I'm going to take a photo of it. Sometimes you don't even think that you need to tuck the laces into the back. When you go on Nike.com, everything's prim and proper. Just how to do that. I learned that the hard way by doing it wrong at Heartbreak when I was 14 or 15 or whatever. But yeah, I just say work your network. You don't have to move. I feel I'm very lucky. I grew up in a run hub. I grew up in a place where there are a lot, Boston and Portland are two really amazing places in the States to grow up if you love running and product. But that doesn't mean you have to move there to figure it out, because there are people that love running in every state of this country, and every inch of the globe, there's somebody that loves running. And maybe it's not, a store like Heartbreak, but maybe it's a race timing company. Maybe you get your start taking photos of people running their first 5K. It's it all silos upwards. So my advice would be reach into your community, because you're obviously, if you're running in high school or you're listening to me talk right now, you probably care about running in some capacity. And what your city, space, town, community looks like. So yeah, keep pulling on that thread, and it'll eventually lead you to something, because you got to get the experience if you want. If you dream of one day working at Nike, get the experience somewhere else, because they're never going to hire somebody without any of the background or experience. So prove that you care, and it'll be easy. Well, prove that you care. And I do think, actually, I don't take that back. If you prove that you care, I think anybody can tell.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how would you say that creators can improve their content? What's one step they can take right now to improve their content? And running creators
stop looking at running creative. That's my advice. I think the best, I told this story last night, but I was when I got my minor, I was going back and forth on it, because I was I'm this photo guy. I work with professional runners. I'm the man. And then I went to my photo class, and this woman was just no nonsense. She's just she literally sat me down after I turned in a project and was like, "Ben, stop showing me this running shit. I don't care. Who are I don't care. I don't know who these people are. So it's not as important for me. I don't care. That's Craig Engels. He's got a mullet. It doesn't bother me. I just it does not go, it's going one ear out the other." So her advice to me was study. She's like, "I want you to look up other photographers and find inspiration from places that are not running." Because the running creative space right now, I think, is rich with draws and ties from all across, the media landscape. Like, I think the Tin Man guys ride to, like, surfer, skater, almost, I dare I say, punk wave. Like, everybody pulls inspiration from everywhere else. So my advice would be, go to your library and find a Joel Meyerowitz photo book. Learn about Annie Leibovitz, follow, other photographers like Philip de Cordialoca. Like, look for photographers that make art that you may not love, you may not like connect with in the same way because it's not running. But if you start looking elsewhere, even on Instagram, like, I think there's this photographer, Elliot Hasty Smith, I just was DMing back and forth with a friend of mine. Like, go to find accounts that, like, wow, you're like, wow, that portrait is incredible. How the hell did they do that? And then think about it, synthesize it, rattle it around in there. And then the next time you're on a shoot, next time you're at practice, next time you're doing X, Y, and Z, and you see, wow, that, like, the wall is like really similar to that other wall I saw. Like, maybe I'm going to have my model stand like this, or maybe I'm going to have my friend, hey, like, come here, would you stand right here, and put the shot together and channel those creative inspirations that have literally nothing to do with running. Because I think the shooting running is boring. Like, it's the same. Everybody looks the same as they're running in circles. But the thing that is beautiful about the running is they're always the details that are unique to the person. And looking at how other photographers, especially, shoot like boring stuff. One of my favorite photographers is a guy named Tony Luong. And I think that's just his Instagram, and he's awesome, but he shoots like boring stuff. He shoots like businessmen, like for Newsweek or like Business Weekly or whatever. I don't know what those publications are, but he's just old dudes, like, and the portraits he makes are so insanely good. And every time he posts something, I'm just like, why have I never thought about that before? How can I bring that to the niche that I kind of operate in and create my work? So yeah, long of the short is, look elsewhere if you want to get better where you are right now.
Awesome. Yeah, so we're going to be wrapping it up soon, but how do you think the sport is changing right now with all these creators? And like you said, it's such a small place, it's such a small niche, especially photography inside the running world is even smaller. How do you think it grows, and how do you think yeah,
it's a good question. It's a little crazy. Like, it's interesting. I feel like I was just before, like, I'm not that old, but I do feel like even old. Like, I remember what it was like to be 18 and be like kind of the only, like, there were photographers that worked in the running space, don't get me wrong, but there were not as many as prolific. And right now, like, getting to chat on the new gen photo talks, like, seeing just the explosion over the past year, 18 months, has been really incredible. Like, I think it is one of those things where a rising tide does lift all boats, or however that saying goes. It's really incredible to me that people are reaching to the camera as a means to stay connected to the sport that they love. And even if your reason for picking up the camera is, I just want to, like, hang out with professional runners, like, that's a great reason for picking it up in the first place, because the more people that are involved, the more people that care, the better a place the sport becomes. Ultimately, like, if we want to grow the love in our sport, we need to start on a grassroots level. And in order to do that, we're going to need a lot of people to kind of carry the weight, because there are a lot of stories in running. There are a lot of athletes. It's one of the most egalitarian sports there is. You don't need much. And by having more individuals armed with, creative storytelling mindsets, more stories are going to be told. And I think it's easy to get caught up in this idea that, like, the goal is world domination. Like, the goal for me is, like, having a bajillion followers on Instagram. But, like, does that shit really matter? No, it doesn't. What really matters is making good work. And what making good work, in that, my perspective, when I think about making good work, it's like making an image that I'm really proud of, And that's kind of the only thing that matters. Telling a story that you think is interesting, that you give a shit about, like amplifying somebody that you're really personally connected to. Like I remember I've shot a lot of friends, like my roommate in Boston, his name's Brian. He ran like what equates to like 403, 404 in the mile, 15. And seeing him win conference at a rinky dinky, like our conference was not very competitive, but seeing him win conference and shooting it when I was just like for fun last year, it was like one of the most meaningful photographs I've ever taken. It's not my best work, but the relationship, the portrait I took after of him being gassed is like, it just says a lot more than
the story behind it. And
yeah, exactly. So to kind of sum it all up is like, we now live in this atmosphere where it's the barrier to entry to making work is low, and that's great. And I hope it stays low. And I hope it's really crazy. I hope that the more people create, the bar gets lifted, because I've noticed within the past, 18 months, year, whatever, like the quality of the content that is being produced by individuals. Like I use Kevin Gunawan as like an amazing example. That guy is a creative powerhouse. He can make anything by like the snap of his fingers, like photo, video, he can do it all. Like I can't do that shit. Like I come from an older generation where it's like almost a bit, I'm only 25, but like I'm almost a one-trick pony. Like I know how to make weird running pictures kind of, and that's my space. But it's cool to see young creators pushing themselves to like do more, do everything, like know how to use InDesign and make a beautiful, composition, a zine, a book, whatever, but also be able to like produce a documentary series and do a podcast and all that shit. So I will say, in summation, like it's a damn good thing. And it's pretty amazing to see it develop. And to any young creator who's listening or, is passionate or thinking about pulling the trigger and like, taking the risk and I don't know, putting a roll of film into your dad's old camera, or like taking your mom's, I flipped video camera from back in the day out for a spin, like do it, do something cool, work your community and tell the stories that matter to you, because, that's the gist. That'll make it better.
That's where it starts. Yep. Thank you. I mean, we're going to wrap this up here, but anything else you want to say to close this out, and any last words?
Let me think. I'd say my biggest thing is when you think about work and making work and being a creative, the most important thing is like doing it because you love it. Like it really doesn't matter how many people follow, how many people care, how many eyeballs it gets in front of. Like if you think work is good, work is good. I think there can be this misconception that paid work equals good work. But to be honest, like, I think that's mostly bullshit. Like, it is cool to get your name in lights, whatever, but it's probably not going to be your best work. Like, I think being able to rest on the fact that, like, when you pick up your camera, when you pick up your microphone, when you pick up your video camera, like, the goal is making something special because you want it made, versus picking it up because it's equals like dollars in your bank account. And that was something that I really struggled with for a long time. And granted, it's easy now because I have a stable job, but I will say, if you don't have the financial pressure, like if you're a kid in high school and you're just figuring it out, like enjoy, like I know it's easy to get ahead of yourself and imagine what it's going to be like when you get to college, what happens after college, blah, 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 but enjoy it. Like enjoy the moment to be flexible. The best work I think I've made has been when the pressure's off. So keep swinging. Don't be afraid to like take pictures, make videos, do content, make art, and be proud of it. And even if it's not perfect now, it will be in a year or two. Like your stuff grows, your strengths grow the more time you spend focused on it. So all I'd say is like, keep going, keep making, keep creating things, keep making art, keep being proud of what you do. And at the end of the day, I promise that in a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever, as long as you stick with it, you're going to look back on how far you've come and smile, because everybody improves and it's just the nature of the game.
Awesome. Yeah. You heard it there. Go follow him on Instagram. Go check out his work. He's doing some awesome stuff. Just trying to grow this running community, this niche we have. So thank you for talking, man.
Of course. Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yep. See ya.